Hi everybody, and welcome to Healthy Bites. Healthy Bites is a collaboration between Nevada County Public Health and Nevada County Media. My name is Shauna Schultz and I will be your host. I am a dietitian and nutrition educator with the CalFresh Healthy Living program, and I'm really excited to show you how to make tasty meals that are healthy and family friendly and also affordable. In today's episode, we will be exploring whole grains, and we'll actually be using the whole grain farro, and we'll be putting that into a soup. And this soup is a farro, chickpea, and veggie soup, and we add the brightness of lemon and some herbs at the end. So it's really, really tasty, easy to make, and very satisfying. So let's go ahead and get started. I already have what we call a mirepoix started in the soup pot here, and it's just a mixture of carrots and celery and onions, and then I also have some garlic in there as well. And I've been sauteing that just to get it started in a little bit of high heat oil. I used avocado oil, just a tablespoon or two. And this is the base of many soups that you make. It gives it a lot of flavor and it's very simple to put together. So we want to saute this for about 5 to 7 minutes, just until those vegetables start to soften a little bit. I did want to show you an easy way to chop an onion because sometimes that mystifies people. So I have an onion here on the cutting board, and what I've done is I have cut this onion from the tip down to the root. All right, so just more or less lengthwise. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cut some vertical lines, but not quite all the way to the tip because we want to keep this piece of onion intact. So we'll cut a few more slices here. And then what we'll do is we will cut it through the middle just once. Again, not quite to the tip. And then we will start to make our slices. And you'll see that they come out more or less already chopped. Then you can further chop them down if you want them into smaller pieces like a dice, but this is usually good for soups. And we'll go ahead and add this into our pot as well. So that makes it so much easier to get that onion chopped rather than having to fight with it. So we'll add that to our pot and I'll give this a little stir. All right, looking good. And these vegetables are actually almost done. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about our other ingredients as well. And we'll begin to add those and build our nourishing soup. So first I'll actually add the broth. We are using a low sodium vegetable broth, about 6 cups. At least we'll start with 6 cups, and then we can always add more if we need more. So if you buy a carton of broth, that's about 4 cups. You can certainly use your own stock if you make your own stock at home. It could be any kind of stock. It doesn't have to be a vegetable stock. Add that in, and we're going to try to bring this up to a boil so we can reduce it to a simmer. I like to use low sodium because then there's not a lot of unnecessary sodium, which isn't so good for our health, and then you can season it yourself, and you usually don't end up adding quite as much as there is in a carton of broth. So best to start low sodium, and then you can tailor it to your tastes. So we have our broth in there, and I just turned up the heat. We'll let that come up to a boil. All right, so I mentioned that we're using farro today, and here's a look at farro. So farro is a whole grain. It's actually an ancient form of wheat, and it has a really chewy dense texture, a little more dense than like a brown rice, but very good, very chewy. So it works really well in a soup with all of that liquid because it really helps to soften it. I did cook the farro ahead of time. It does take a little while to cook. I cooked 1 cup of dry farro, and I added about 5 or 6 cups of water, and I just let it simmer until it was softened, and that took about 50 minutes. And then you can just drain off any excess liquid and you're ready to go. This also works really well in salads. Farro is a great source of fiber. It does have all 3 parts of that grain there, so it's a good source of fiber, actually a really good source of protein, and a very good source of vitamins and minerals as well. So very tasty. You can find it at most grocery stores. A lot of times you can find it in the bulk food section, which is a great way to try new things because you don't have to buy a lot of it. So I like to try new things from the bulk, and I can just buy what I think I'll use or just buy a little bit and give it a try. Okay, so we have our farro, and I'm actually going to go ahead and add that into our soup mixture. This makes this soup really filling, which is very nice. All right, so we've got that. And then we'll also be adding some chickpeas. This is 1 can of chickpeas that have just been drained and rinsed. You can use chickpeas that you have cooked from dried chickpeas. That's fine. You would probably want to put about 1.5 cups in there. But the chickpeas are going to also help add more fiber and also some protein. So I'm going to go ahead and add our chickpeas into our mixture here. All right. And it smells so good already. When you have that mirepoix base of the garlic and the onion and the celery and the carrots, it just smells wonderful and really adds a lot of fragrance to your house. All right, so chickpeas, and then we will also add some broccoli, and this is about 1 small head of broccoli, and I just chopped it into smaller florets, and I also used the stems. Don't forget about those stems of the broccoli. You can use them, and they work really well in a soup because they become really tender that way, and they actually have kind of a nice mild sweet flavor. So now we have less food waste going on when we can utilize that whole part of the plant. So I chopped up the stems. I cut off just like the very outermost tougher part and then took the rest of the stem and just cut it into small pieces. So we'll add our broccoli in here. We just keep stacking this soup. This is a very, very hearty soup, I think I mentioned. So we'll add our broccoli. All right, I'm going to actually add a little bit of salt and pepper. Probably about 1 teaspoon of salt and maybe about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of black pepper. We'll add that in. Give it a little stir. All right. And things are starting to warm up over here. All right. Okay. Let's see. Next, I think we'll add some parsley. You can actually add any herb that you want to. Any type of herb would work beautifully in here. I just happen to really like parsley a lot, and it's very accessible and it's rather inexpensive. So this is an Italian parsley, also called a flat leaf parsley. And we're just going to give it a rough chop. What's nice about soups and herbs is you can also use the stems because they will soften in there. So it's not necessary to pick all of the leaves off. You can chop some of those stems in there. The only exception would be something like thyme or basil, but if you're using cilantro or dill or oregano or parsley, you can leave those stems in there. So let's give this a rough little chop here. fresh herbs add a lot of brightness and they add a lot of flavor. So you really don't have to use as much salt, which is very nice. All right. So we'll add in our parsley here. Sprinkle that on top. I'm going to give it a quick stir. And it's such a beautiful soup. We have so many bright green colors in here, and then some orange from the carrots. And the vegetable broth is actually a really pretty color also, so lovely. In the end, we'll be adding some kale just at the very end. It doesn't really take long to soften and wilt, so we'll add this right at the end, but I did want to show you an easy way to get the leaves off of the kale. So I have one piece here of kale, and this is a curly green kale. You could really use any kind of kale that you like, or you could even use another type of green. Swiss chard would be wonderful. You could put beet greens in there, another way to utilize the whole plant. You could put spinach in there. Anything will work, really. Very customizable with what vegetables you use in this soup. You really can't go too wrong. So one way of getting the leaves off, you can certainly just pick them off. I mean, they come off rather easily, but you can also just kind of get the leaves off here at the base and hold tight, and you can strip them off. And then you just have your stem left. I actually feed the stems to my dogs at home. They love kale stems, which makes me laugh. All right, so kale, and we'll probably actually only add a few handfuls of kale. We don't necessarily need to add all of that. Okay, so I think we have one more thing to add. And this we add at the end of the dish. We're going to add some lemon. This ends up being a really lemony soup, which gives it a lot of bright, exciting flavor. And using lemon is also a great tip for reducing sodium intake. It really helps with flavor, and especially if you're missing salt, adding some lemon really, really helps. So the first thing that we'll do is we'll actually zest the lemon, and then we'll add the lemon juice. So here I have just a basic zester. You could also use a grater at home, and that would be fine. I like to hold the zester up so that the zest that we collect doesn't fall out, and then we can just dump it right into the soup. And we just kind of work our way around this lemon, making sure not to get a lot of the white, which is called pith, because that white part underneath citrus, whether it's a lime or an orange or a lemon, is kind of bitter tasting. So we don't want to add a lot of bitter to our soup. So you just don't need to go too hard at it, is what I'm trying to say. All right, we'll keep working our way around. It smells so good. I love the smell of lemon. It really just kind of wakes you up, makes you feel happy. All right, almost done here. All right, so I've got this all collected here, you can see, and I'm just going to dump that right in. And we'll give this a little stir. Basically, we want to let this simmer for about 10 minutes. So once you have that farro cooked, this soup comes together very, very quickly in about 20 minutes. So it can make a really easy weeknight meal. All right, we'll juice the lemon next. And it's a good idea just to give your lemon a nice little roll. It helps break apart the cell walls, and you'll get a lot more juice out of the lemon if you do this ahead of time. All right, so we'll slice it crosswise down the middle. You can certainly use your hand, but I love using my juicing tool. Put that lemon juice in. I can't tell you, I think the lemon juice makes all the difference. All right, let's do one more half. If you don't have lemon on hand, that's okay too. You don't have to add it. All right. All right, I'm gonna give this one more stir. This soup will serve about 4 to 6 people. You can freeze it if you don't eat all of it and save it for a later date. I always try to remember to freeze things into smaller containers so that when you take it out to thaw, you're not having to thaw a bigger container of soup that maybe you might not eat all of it. So good idea just to freeze it in smaller containers so that it's ready to go for you. All right, and then we'll actually go ahead and we'll add in our kale. And I'm just gonna add in a few handfuls. That's plenty. Once kale wilts and it softens, it's not quite as bulky, so it will soften in there. All right, we'll give this a stir. And we just need probably a couple minutes just to let this soften up a little bit. And that's how easy it is to make this soup. You can find this recipe on eatfresh.org as well, so it's there for reference. All right, I hope that you'll try it at home. It's a big hit with my family at home. They really like it. All right, and we'll serve some up here in a second, but I did want to mention that one of the great things about this dish is that it really is a balanced meal in a bowl. You have whole grains, you have a protein source coming from the chickpeas, you have a lot of vegetables, so everything that we would want on our plate or in our bowl for a balanced meal is actually in this soup. And soups are rather inexpensive to make and easy, and they're filling, so it's a really great way to feed your family. So let's go ahead and serve some up. You can see how pretty it is, what it looks like. Right. And I would maybe add a little more broth as you need to. Sometimes as soup sits in the refrigerator, it thickens a bit. So not a bad idea just to have some extra broth on hand. But here is our beautiful soup. Thank you so much for joining me today, and I'm looking forward to another episode of Healthy Bites soon.